As a former member of the populist left, I have critiqued Kyle Kulinski's view of politics, how he views the American electorate, how he views how campaigns should be run. I have critiqued many populist progressives because I don't think they have a very sober view of who voters actually are. And this isn't super serious, but there are very key points I want to correct Kyle on here because he says Kamala's new strategy is backfiring big time. This is an overreaction, and yeah, let's get into it. I'm going to play it at 1.25 speed.
All right, guys, so got some bad news on the election front that I got to share with you. We got some new numbers that just came in. I'm going to get to those in a second, but first let's start with a little bit of what Kamala Harris has been leaning into recently. So as you all know, she did a campaign event with Liz Cheney not too long ago, and she thanked Dick Cheney for his service to the country, to which, as Jeremy Scahill pointed out, he said, what service? Be specific. What are you thanking him for? I'd love for you to elaborate on that. She didn't. So, but that to me looks like a massive strategic misstep. On top of just substantively being bad, right? It's also a strategic misstep.
When talking about substance, I think it's a really big deal that we make sure we actually talk about policy that's being done. So Dick Cheney is not influencing Democratic policy. Dick Cheney is on his hands and knees crawling to Kamala for her to win because everyone from the old establishment and the liberal order, which we need to fix, but they all want to reject fascism and authoritarianism that overthrows democratic norms in our United States of America. That's why this is happening. Dick Cheney is not supporting the pro-DEI, the pro-trans, the pro-expanding Medicare to cover at-home care. He is not supporting the anti-price gouging party for funsies. It's because he's acting in desperation. Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney doing this are getting moderate Republicans that you don't see on Twitter, that you don't see online. It is getting them to move. I see old people, and I don't mean older, I mean older adults, above the age of 70 switching because of Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, because they're coming in, making the campaign more welcoming for those Nikki Haley voters, and that does matter. But when it comes to actually policy and substance, we don't care about stamps of approval or emotions or what Dick Cheney has done. We care about the current issue of rejecting Donald Trump, who is talking about using the U.S. military to attack Democrats, liberals, progressives, leftists within the U.S. and all his political opponents.
The RFKs of the world are out there saying, oh, the Democratic Party is now the party of Dick Cheney, and that can't be my party anymore. And that is a fucking bullshit argument because Donald Trump has Tom Cotton supporting him. He has Mike Pompeo supporting him. He has Lindsey Graham supporting him. If you want to do a count on which party has more neocons supporting them, sorry, RFK, you're going to lose. There are more neocons in the Republican Party than there is in the Democratic Party. And especially when you go to the voting base and their thoughts on the issues, Democratic voters are way more anti-war than Republican voters are, okay? So I hate that bullshit argument, but I also hate that Kamala gave these people ammunition to make a bullshit argument like that, right? Now, maybe they make that argument anyway, but you make it easier when you're like, hey, thank you, Dick Cheney, for endorsing me, right? So I think that's a strategic misstep. I think it's a substantive misstep as well. I don't like it. To be clear, I'm okay with her touting Republican support, but there's a good way of doing it and a bad way of doing it. You don't do it by taking a former congressperson whose approval rating is probably in the 30-something percentile range, and she voted 92% of the time with Trump, and you do an event with her holding hands and singing Kumbaya. I don't like that. A good way of doing it is to say, hey, here are a bunch of union voters who voted for Trump, and they're going to come out on stage and tell you.
Okay, right there. It does matter because Liz Cheney, for example, may have a low overall approval rating, but the voters that do like her, so Democrats don't like her, and Trumpists and MAGA, they don't like her. But the voters that do like Liz Cheney are those Republicans that are gettable. And now Kyle Kulinski is talking about bringing union members on stage, which the Democratic Party has done a lot. That isn't shown on Twitter, but every rally has unions there. They always have unions behind them. They always have unions talking, union leaders talking at rallies. And many unions, we saw Biden and Harris literally save the Teamsters, and they still are going to vote Trump. A majority of Teamsters will vote Trump because they care more about the racial anger, white identity politics than they care about the class politics. Many people, most people, the median voter, voters who are still undecided, care about political theatrics. There's a reason they are still undecided. It's not because they have policy concerns.
How he's a con man and he didn't deliver on his promises, and they're endorsing me and Biden because we delivered for unions, right? Like that's how you do it. That's how you do it. But anyway, so she's leaning into this more now. So she comes out and says, this is on.
And I wish politics was more class-based, like Kyle Kulinski believes. And this has always been a weakness for Kyle Kulinski, thinking it's too class-based. If everyone just adopted Kyle Kulinski's form of politics, then Democrats would win every single state because of economic populism. We know that's not true. Look at Donald Trump's strong support with all the workers he screwed over.
October 11th. Today, I am announcing that as president, I will create a bipartisan council of advisors to give feedback on policy and information and inform my administration. Our democracy needs a healthy two-party system. So, big reveal of a bipartisan council of advisors. Now, look, I understand what she's trying to do. She's a black woman, so unfortunately, the public is going to code her as far left. She's a black woman. She has to be far left. So she's really trying to counter that by leaning hard into, no, I'm not far left, I'm not.
That's growth right there. I think before Kyle Kulinski would not have brought up that fact that Kamala is a black woman, so there are unique challenges, and much of the Liz Cheney and the Republican Council is her trying to appeal to more moderate voters because they're going to see her as more radical and unable to lead.
Not far left. I promise you I'm not far left.
Good.
But again, there's a good way of doing it and a bad way of doing it. What I would do if I was her, if I was advising her, is I would say, tell people you're a centrist. Tell people you're a moderate. Use the label centrist and use the label moderate, but then go on to say, I'm a moderate, and that's why I'm going to give all kids in America free school breakfast and free school lunch. I'm a moderate, and that's why we're going to do 12 weeks paid family leave and 12 weeks paid sick leave. I'm a moderate, and that's why we're going to ban price gouging. I'm a moderate, and that's why I want to do the $6,000 child tax credit. And look, to be fair to her, a lot of the policy that she rolled out are genuinely good. We gave her credit the other day because she wants Medicare to now cover home care. That's a phenomenal idea. It's a great idea. So a lot of the policies she's releasing are pretty good. It's just you got to package that together, lean into the right ones, and also label yourself a moderate and a centrist, as opposed.
Okay, so she's appearing on many different platforms, whether it's The View, she's going on Fox soon, she's been on podcasts, she's been doing late night shows, and a bunch of different things. Kamala is hitting all of these bases, not all of the time, but they are being very smart about where they target these messages towards. And Kyle Kulinski needs to realize at some point, the issue is not Kamala's messaging, but the media in general. The issue is propaganda from X and Elon Musk. The issue is propaganda from Fox News. Fox News every day looks like they're in pain talking about the stock market going up because they're so biased. And another issue, and I'm sorry to say it, is the voters, is misinformed, uninformed voters who do not understand how government works, who do not care how government works. Many of the people who are not being receptive of her current messages are in these categories where she can't do anything. They might just vote based on what TikTok they see that morning, or they might not vote at all.
To bear-hugging Republicans on a regular basis, especially neocon war criminals. Okay, so don't love this whole, bipartisan council of advisors thing. It smells a lot like Hillary 2016 to me. This idea of like, forget the base is locked in, we got to run to the right and get like 7 suburban wine moms who are former Republicans. It's like, it's a balancing act. You can't piss off your base enough too much where you're leaving votes there to pick up fewer votes among moderate Republicans. All right,
I wish Hillary was that smart and savvy in 2016, to be honest. I wish she did that. I wish she did something. If she did anything, she would have won.
Another example of this right here. I'm still baffled that Kamala Harris at a Univision town hall kept touting her endorsement by Bush's Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, who resigned in disgrace, as though that would mean anything to the audience. Kind of sums up how well this catering to the center-right.
They are not doing this on accident. They are not doing this on accident. Do you pay attention to numbers of where voters are going, where different demographics are going? She's bringing that up on purpose because they are testing it against tons of data. Hillary's campaign failed because of a lack of effort, being overconfident, being very, I guess you could say, just looking down on everyone, being egotistical. Kamala's campaign is doing this for very calculated reasons. She is talking to groups that might be more conservative than you. She's not trying to appeal to Twitter in these moments. But I promise you, she is touching all these bases, depending on what media she is talking to. They are being very smart about it, to be very frank. And I am very critical of Democratic messaging. They're not perfect, but for a campaign that's still 40 days old, I think they've been hitting many points on messaging. And we need to pivot towards focusing on educating the wider electorate, how we fight back against disinformation more effectively. And right now, I can tell you from working in this area, many people are giving up on policy, and they just want to flood good information to try and combat the disinformation, because there's so few ways we can legally limit the spread of disinformation until there's major policy change, until there's some changes for the protection of social media companies like X, for example. And these court proceedings take a while. Even if these proceedings happen, Elon Musk doing illegal stuff now isn't going to matter in 2 years, especially if Donald Trump wins and he can get a pardon.
Is going. Yeah, so Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, Alberto Gonzales, all these horrible, horrible people, horrible policies. Alberto Gonzales resigned in disgrace. There were so many scandals during the Bush administration, the torture scandal, the legal cover-up, all that. And it's like, I have Alberto Gonzales. Like, do you literally just think because he has a Hispanic name that it'll, like, get more Hispanic voters? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Maybe. That is a possibility. That is actually a possibility. Kamala's name being mispronounced right now is a big talking point. Being able to connect to someone's identity in that way can matter. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. but there's a chance that it does actually, Kyle.
And so, look, guys,
You'd be surprised.
Actions have consequences. And here are some of those consequences right here.
Okay, so we're going to go off of a poll, which already has a margin of error. And many of the polls are flooded with bad data and bad methodology because they're scared to look biased. We're going to go off of a poll we read off Twitter and say this is indicative of a larger trend of Kamala's failed strategy. And we're going to blame Kamala's campaign and talk about Kamala's campaign doing the wrong messaging because she isn't appealing to progressives enough who either are voting for her already or are not. By the way, those progressives who are not voting for Kamala are probably never going to vote for her. The ones who are gonna. She's appealing to moderate bases right now that might not be counted in these polls, like these moderate Republicans that they thought were safe before, that they might not be polling as actively. I've had many friends sign up to vote that I never thought would vote because they saw how deranged Donald Trump has gotten. We're going to take all of this information, look at these polls, and make a huge determination. That's what Kyle Kulinski is going to do here. And that's not good. If campaigns reacted this much off of random polling, they would be all over the place. And by the way, Harris's campaign is probably going to benefit from the polls being close when it comes to getting voters out. Donald Trump's campaign is going to benefit from the polls being close when he tries to overturn the election. So for very different reasons why they both want the polls to be close.
3 national polls on Sunday morning. So, okay, let me break this down for you. In the last poll in September, in the ABC poll, Kamala was +6. CBS was actually +4, and NBC was +5. So she was +6, +4, and +5 in the September polls, right? In the new ABC poll, she's only up 2 instead of 6.
Yeah, when she just announced, and the response bias at the beginning of her campaign was going to be huge, because right when she announced, the Democrats were probably begging to answer polls. We have to think about response bias. We have to look at the actual numbers that are recorded in these polls, which I'm not going to do because I don't get paid enough to do YouTube, to do all that research on my free time. If you want to help, by the way, please consider subscribing, dropping a like, adding a comment, and please consider becoming a channel member. It really helps me make videos like this. I promise my quality and capacity and numbers of videos would go up tons for every member that's added. Tons of awesome perks, and I'll show you some behind the scenes stuff. It starts at $3 to join as a member on YouTube, and also it starts at $5 on Patreon. So for only $3 a month, you can really help me out. But anyways, I forgot what I was talking about. I completely forgot. Let's go.
In the new CBS poll, she's up 3 instead of 4. And in the NBC poll, she's now tied instead of being +5, which she was last time. The new strategy is not working. Guys, they came out of the gate so fucking hot. It was looking like it was going to be a landslide because their trend was phenomenal. And what were they doing at the time? At the time, it was, these guys are fucking weird. They're seriously weird. Yeah, they're a threat to democracy. Yeah, they're authoritarian, but they're also just fucking weird. The shit they care about,
This messaging did not stop. If you watch the television or watch a rally or watch any organizing or canvassing efforts, this messaging did not stop, by the way. It did not stop. Kyle Kulinski thinks they stopped doing it because he's on Twitter and he sees lefties complaining whenever she brings out a moderate Republican or mentions one.
The shit they talk about, the shit they say. You got a party that tries to ban IVF and wants to ban no-fault divorce and wants to ban pornography and 39 Republican senators voted against gay marriage like last year. This is a settled debate. What are we doing here? They're weird. That was working. We're not going back was working. Embracing freedom and patriotism and stealing that from Republicans was working. And then guess what? We covered what happened the other day. Kamala took on board a lot of the Biden team people. And they, in their first meeting with her, they said, listen, the weird thing is too negative. The we're not going back thing is too negative. You got to drop it. And they dropped it. And now look at what's happening. It's a mix of that and like hiding Tim Walz in a basement. This is what happened.
Bro, I've seen Tim Walz in like 14 different Pennsylvania locations in the past 3 weeks, bro. I don't know what he means by hiding Tim Walz in a basement. Maybe not doing as many media interviews or something.
This is what happened. So
which
look,
he's been on late night TV and doing interviews.
Is,
I don't know.
Trump is running one of the worst campaigns I've literally ever seen, right? Like way worse than Trump.
Yeah, okay. So this is a good point that we need to actually discuss what I said about voters. Donald Trump is running one of the worst campaigns ever. Kamala Harris is running a great campaign. An amazing campaign, especially given the time it took them to actually put it together. They are hitting so many bases, and I know they're not appealing to Kyle Kulinski and his demographic 100% of the time, but they are doing very well, hitting different areas. Donald Trump is doing so bad, he should not be close in the polls to literally anyone. And the fact he's close to the polls, close to Kamala in the polls, after she's running a very good campaign, is probably because she's a woman. She's also not white. White women are still voting for Donald Trump. A majority of them are voting for Donald Trump. So thank you, white women, and white people in general. But the fact that Donald Trump is close is signs of a much, much larger and more sinister problem. And either the polls are off and they're trying to make things seem super close for ratings and to seem non-biased, or Harris is up by a lot. Well, and Harris is up by a lot, or it really is close, and the misinformation and disinformation is powerful to levels that we did not even understand yet. And the cult in America has expanded from 25% of the population to 40 to 45%. Because what Donald Trump has said in the past 3 weeks with the hurricanes and FEMA and causing violence and calling for violence against Democrats and saying he wants to use the government and the military, using the military against liberals within our country, and talking, just stealing policies from Hitler, talking about we need policies from the 1700s to attack alien enemies within our borders and the radical left. The fact Donald Trump is close is, like I said, it's not Harris's or her campaign's fault. We can always nitpick as much as we want, but the reasons Kyle Kulinski says here are not true. And if we keep on using this, thinking that Kyle Kulinski is employing right here, or deploying, I don't know what the words are. I always fall off when I try to record videos near the end. But using the thinking Kyle Kulinski is using here does not make our movement stronger, because we're not addressing the core issues. Economic populism does not matter. Talking about unions does not matter unless if people are educated and they understand these things. And with unions, we don't have enough people educated, not because they don't go to college, not because they don't have enough high school education, but also they're not getting experience. They don't experience why unions are needed. And unions are at all-time support right now, but policies that are pro-union are not being supported because workers don't understand why those policies matter, why unions matter, what union dues what union dues do. And all of this stuff is really scary. These campaigns should not be close in any way. It's not because of a failure on Kamala's part. It's failures on all of us. It's failures on our media. It's failures on the New York Times for sane-washing Donald Trump's direct fascist, authoritarianism, nativist, nationalist, whatever you want to call it, his rants that are completely anti-Constitution, anti-America, and anti-freedom. It's X and misinformation and disinformation on social media that they still have not fixed since 2016. These are the issues that are the main thing in society right now. And without fixing them first, without fixing those issues first, progressivism and good policy is not possible.
Even 2020, like leagues worse than Trump 2016. Like, this is the worst campaign I've ever seen anybody run ever. So Trump's doing so bad, it might not matter, but there'd be a comfortable 7, 8, 9, 10-point lead if they kept leaning into the original strategy, right?
There'd be a comfortable 10-point lead if they leaned into the original strategy of calling them weird. There'd be a 10-point lead. What country do you live in?
So just go back to that strategy. It's not,
have
it's
you
not
talked
fucking
to
rocket
people?
science.
Have you talked to voters? It's not rocket science. You think it's easy. You think that these politicians don't want to win every race, even with corporate donors and Biden advisors. What country do you think you live in? Up by 10 points. Where? What? How? What are you talking about, dude?
The most when you were doing the things that were cool and that were interesting and that were, clear lines of demarcation between you and the Republicans. It does undercut your message. I understand what they're trying to do. But
what voters are we targeting here that are still gettable, that we are not getting, and Kyle Kulinski's strategy would help us get? And when it comes to Palestine, there is no policy adjustment Kamala's going to make, whether she should or shouldn't. There is no policy she can change that'll help her on that front. So other than that, what is Kyle Kulinski's political strategy getting? They are still motivating the base. The base is motivated. What is his strategy going to do to add votes to Kamala?
It does undercut your message when you say they're anti-freedom, we're pro-freedom. They're weird, we're not weird. They represent the past, we're not going back, we represent the future. You have these clear lines of like, we are good, they are bad, and then you undercut it when you're like, and here's all these Republicans that I'm welcoming aboard, and that's great, and now I'm going to have a bipartisan committee to help me with my policies. It's like, well, what is it? And, as David...
Okay, there's Republicans I'm welcoming aboard, and also I'm welcoming a panel of Republicans.
Cole points out here, our buddy at the Rational National, Kamala Harris. Republicans want to control your body and are a threat to democracy, and I can't wait to work with them so they can tell me what to do. Now, again, I get...
Okay, I'm done watching this. Adding Republicans to the administration and being this friendly across partisan lines is by far one of the best ways to convert Republicans into believing more of our core principles. Blocking them out completely is not how anything works. There's something called like contact theory, where if someone works in a workplace that has a union, or if they are around a social group that's pro good policies and democracy and freedom and that's very accepting, they will become more like that group. Arguing with someone does not work. Fighting with someone does not work. Welcoming them in under these circumstances where they are crawling to the Democratic Party for support because their party fell apart is one of the best ways to start shifting American sentiment overall in a more left direction. There's a reason Bernie Sanders came after Obama, 8 years after Obama, and now with Donald Trump, we're inviting Republicans back on. It's because we need to control the center and center left, move the American public in that direction, and then improve on that foundation. We are not going to go from far right to far left ever. It's going to take building movements, building momentum, and inviting people and changing their minds, actually changing their minds. And it's not going to just be economic populism. People are more complicated than that. For better or worse, the median voter right now is wild. Their decision-making process is wild. And we are hoping they get out of bed on the right side that morning. Because they will decide this election. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, channel memberships are open. They start at $3. You get a special badge in the comments, highlighted comments, and also I will respond to everything, special emotes, special private chats to get more insight into my personal organizing life, maybe possible races I can run for, so you can support that as well with only $3 a month or higher tiers. That'd be awesome. But yeah, it takes a couple hours a day to make these videos. It'd be great to have your support.